After years at war, a soldier returns home, only to find his most loyal companion, a German shepherd, waiting for a reunion. Separated by war, bound by loyalty, a soldier and his faithful dog are finally reunited in a moment that will melt your heart. When the battle ended, one bond remained unbroken. The soldier's return brings a powerful reunion with the dog who never forgot him. From the chaos of war to the peace of home, witness the heartwarming reunion of a soldier and his loyal four-legged partner. The sound of boots hitting the dusty ground echoed faintly as the convoy slowed to a stop at the edge of a quiet base far away from home. Among the men stepping down from the trucks was Sergeant Michael Hayes, a soldier who had spent years in a foreign land, carrying out missions that tested not just his endurance but his heart. Behind his calm exterior was a longing that never left him, memories of his loyal German shepherd Duke. They had trained together, patrolled dangerous zones, and faced risk side by side until an explosion during a mission forced them apart. Michael was injured and evacuated for treatment, while Duke, though shaken, remained on active duty with another handler. That separation carved a wound in Michael's spirit that no metal could heal. For months during recovery, letters from fellow soldiers told him that Duke was still performing with unmatched bravery, sniffing out threats, saving lives, and earning respect on the battlefield. Yet Michael could never shake the guilt that he had left his partner behind. As Michael's deployment ended and he finally stepped onto American soil, there was joy, relief, and a heavy silence that only those who return from war understand. Families reunited around him at the airport, the laughter and tears of mothers, fathers, children, and spouses filling the air. But Michael's heart was caught somewhere between the noise and the memories. He had one dream: to see Duke again, to know that the bond they built through sweat, danger, and trust had not been broken by time or distance. A reunion seemed unlikely, as military working dogs often continue to serve until retirement, sometimes adopted by other families. But fate had a different plan, and destiny was quietly working to bring them back together. Michael settled into a modest home near his hometown, trying to find normalcy after years of discipline and chaos. Nights were the hardest, the echoes of war creeping back through dreams. He often woke with his hand reaching out, expecting Duke by his side, the steady breathing of a dog that had never let him down. Instead, there was emptiness. The longing grew heavier until one afternoon, a letter arrived from the Department of Defense Canine Program. Duke had reached retirement age after years of honorable service, and as his original handler, Michael was given the first opportunity to adopt him. His hands shook as he read the words, unable to believe that destiny had brought him this moment. The days leading up to the reunion felt longer than any deployment. Michael drove to the facility where retired military dogs waited for their forever homes. Each mile felt like a countdown to a part of his soul he had been missing. When he arrived, the handler led him through the kennels, explaining how Duke had remained strong, loyal, and fiercely protective to the very end of his service. Then, the moment came. At the far end of the corridor, Duke stood tall, his fur sprinkled with age, but his eyes burning with the same intensity Michael remembered. The German shepherd tilted his head, ears perked, and then recognition flashed. Duke barked, a deep, familiar sound that made Michael's knees weaken. The gate opened, and the world seemed to stand still. Duke ran forward, powerful yet graceful, closing the distance, as if no time had passed. Michael knelt to the ground, his arms open, tears breaking free as the dog leapt into his embrace. It was not just a reunion, it was the return of trust, loyalty, and love forged in the fires of war. Duke pressed against him, tail wagging, paws heavy on Michael's chest, as if to say, "I never forgot you." Soldiers and staff around them stood in silence, moved by the unspoken language between man and dog, a bond beyond words. Life after that moment transformed. Duke came home with Michael, stepping into a new world of peace after years of service. The transition was not easy. Duke, accustomed to commands, missions, and strict environments, had to learn how to relax, how to be a family dog. But Michael was patient, guiding him gently into civilian life, giving back the comfort that Duke had once given him. Walks through the park replaced patrols through dusty villages. The sounds of children laughing replaced the echoes of distant gunfire. For the first time in years, Michael felt whole. Neighbors who recognized him as the returning soldier often stopped to watch Duke walk beside him, marveling at the discipline and grace of the dog. Their story spread quietly, from whispers in town to features in local news. People admired the reunion, calling it a heartwarming reminder of the sacrifices both soldiers and service animals make. Families who saw Michael and Duke together at the park were often moved to tears, telling their children about the loyalty of dogs who served alongside humans. Michael never sought attention, but he understood the power of their story. It was more than just his reunion. It was a living testament to loyalty, resilience, and the healing power of companionship. Every night, as the sun set behind their quiet neighborhood, Michael would sit on the porch with Duke lying at his feet. He would stroke the dog's fur, whispering thanks for every mission, every moment, every heartbeat they had shared. And Duke, eyes half closed, would let out a contented sigh, as though he understood every word. For Michael, the war was behind him, but the healing was ahead, and Duke was the one carrying him forward. The reunion was not the end of their story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one of peace, love, and a loyalty that could never be broken. The days after Duke's homecoming settled into a rhythm that Michael had long dreamed of but never truly believed would come true. Every morning began with the soft sound of Duke's paws against the hardwood floor, the gentle reminder that he was no longer waking up alone. Together they walked the quiet streets of the neighborhood, Duke's disciplined stride still evident, though softened by the relaxed wag of his tail. Children would wave from their yards, often asking if they could pet the dog, and Michael, with a proud smile, would kneel beside Duke and allow the gentle introductions. For many, Duke was more than just a retired military dog. He was a hero whose silent story radiated through every glance and gesture. Michael often thought about how strange it was that Duke had once patrolled hostile terrain thousands of miles away, and now his greatest mission was making families smile. Still, the transition was layered with challenges. Duke would sometimes startle at sudden noises, the backfire of a car, the slam of a door, his body instantly shifting into alert mode. In those moments, Michael would calmly kneel beside him, offering reassurance with a steady hand and a soft voice. Healing was not a straight path, but it was a path they walked together. Michael found himself slowly shedding his own burdens, too, the weight of combat memories less suffocating as Duke reminded him daily that life after war could be gentle. In many ways, they were each other's therapy, wordlessly guiding one another through the maze of adjustment. As the weeks turned into months, Michael began sharing more of their journey online, posting photos and short videos of Duke enjoying retired life. The response was overwhelming. Veterans from around the country reached out, telling Michael that his story gave them hope. Families wrote messages of gratitude, explaining how they showed their children the posts to teach them about loyalty and sacrifice. Even organizations dedicated to supporting retired service dogs contacted him, asking if he would consider speaking about the importance of adoption for military canines. Though he had never sought the spotlight, Michael realized that telling their story was another form of service, a way to honor not just Duke but every handler and every dog who stood guard in silence. One evening, Michael was invited to a local veterans gathering, where he and Duke were asked to attend as special guests. The hall was filled with men and women who had worn the uniform, some in wheelchairs, others leaning on canes, but all bound by a thread of resilience. As Duke walked through the crowd, tail swaying, the atmosphere shifted. Smiles broke out. Eyes softened. Some veterans bent to pat his fur, whispering quietly as if Duke could understand the language of scars and healing. Michael spoke briefly, his voice steady but filled with emotion, sharing how Duke had saved lives overseas and how their reunion brought peace in ways he could never put into words. The applause that followed was not just for him, but for every bond forged in service and every silent sacrifice made by four-legged soldiers. At home, the bond between Michael and Duke deepened in small, ordinary ways. Duke claimed his favorite spot near the fireplace, always within sight of Michael. On summer evenings, they would drive to the lake, where Duke would wade into the water with playful splashes, his military stiffness giving way to the carefree joy of a dog rediscovering his youth. Michael laughed more than he had in years, his heart lighter with each moment. He began writing in a journal, recording the memories of their reunion and the lessons Duke continued to teach him: patience, trust, unconditional love. It was therapy in ink, and those pages became a quiet treasure. As time passed, Duke aged gracefully, his muzzle silvering, his steps slowing, yet his spirit never wavering. Michael often found himself watching Duke with a bittersweet awareness, knowing that every day was a gift. The years of service had taken their toll on his loyal companion, but Duke's eyes still shone with pride and devotion. And Michael, who once felt broken by war, found strength in caring for him. Their story became less about battles fought overseas and more about victories won at home, moments of peace, community, and healing. Neighbors began calling them a symbol of resilience. Schools invited Michael to bring Duke for presentations, teaching children about loyalty, courage, and compassion. Duke, ever patient, would sit quietly as dozens of small hands reached out to pet him, his calm presence turning lessons into memories that those children would never forget. Parents often thanked Michael afterward, saying their kids spoke about wanting to be as brave and loyal as Duke. The once lonely soldier and his steadfast dog had become ambassadors of hope. One winter evening, as snow fell softly against the windows, Michael sat beside Duke, a warm blanket draped over both of them. The fireplace crackled, and the world felt still. Michael whispered, almost to himself, how grateful he was for the journey that had brought them back together. In that quiet moment, it struck him that life's most powerful stories are not written in grand gestures, but in the silent presence of someone who never leaves your side. Duke's head rested on his lap, his breathing steady, and Michael knew that whatever time remained for them, it would be cherished. Their story, though born in war, blossomed into a tale of redemption and love. It was a reminder to everyone who heard it that loyalty endures beyond battlefields, that healing is possible through companionship, and that sometimes the greatest victories come not from triumph in conflict but from the embrace of a loyal friend. Michael and Duke's reunion was more than a soldier meeting his dog again. It was the rebirth of hope, a living documentary of courage and compassion. And as long as they walked side by side, the world around them was reminded that bonds built on trust and love can withstand even the harshest storms. For Michael, the war would always be a part of his story, but thanks to Duke, it was no longer the defining chapter. The defining chapter was this one, a soldier and his loyal dog, reunited after war, living proof that love is the most powerful weapon against despair. And every time Duke's eyes met his, Michael knew that their story was not just theirs. It was a universal reminder that no matter how far apart life may pull us, true loyalty always finds its way back home.